Good evening and welcome. It is All for United. We are back after a little bit of time off. I think that's what the summer's meant to be for. And whilst the Manchester United players have been off running around America, pretending to play football matches that actually matter, we've been sitting here looking at the sun and thinking, what is this amazing orange thing that's sat in the sky? Why is my head turning red? Certainly a problem I have, but not a problem that I think Matt Morgan has just below us. We've got ourselves a cracking panel, as we normally do. So let's have a little hello to them all. Matt, how are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm really good. I don't have that trouble, thankfully, with my head. Not yet, anyway. Give it another few years, got a good few years or so yet. But yeah, no, good to be back, and looking forward to getting back into it again.
Excellent, that's what we like to hear. And as you can see, I've invited Daz along today as well. Someone who, without being rude or disparaging, I'm sure has the same trouble as myself when it comes to trying to keep the sun's rays off your wonderfully shiny bunts like mine. Are you all right, mate? He's muted.
Challenge over the last week. It's been a massive challenge to sort of enjoy the sun but stay protected at the same time. I was actually going to do a video on my TikTok channel talking about how gingers need to protect themselves in the sun because it's just a losing battle. But yeah, I've sort of enjoyed the sun, but also that slow period between pre-season finishing and the season starting.
Absolutely. It's very, very, very nearly over, which will mean we can actually start talking about football again and caring. And of course, just over to my left-hand side, it is my right-hand man, Mr. Dan Field. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm tired, but I'm really bored now. Football needs to come back. It needs to come back quickly. It's been too long. I need a proper game of football to watch.
So what the mad thing is, Dan, is that football's been here. Like, if you actually take it,
it's just not the same.
The season to the beginning of the season, it's been on. We've had international football that's been going on. The girlies and indeed some of the under-23s are in the Olympics at the moment. So there's been football going on all the time, but it just doesn't feel real and right and it's like meaningful, does it? Especially with obviously no British interest in the Olympics. So yeah, I'm with you. Looking forward to it all kicking off. And tonight, boys and girls, the countdown begins. So I'm very much looking forward to tonight's conversation. But before we move on into all manner of United chat, transfers, pre-season friendlies, the Community Shield, and indeed the season ahead, before we start having those sorts of conversations, the big news, I suppose, that has been coming out today is that the United hierarchy seem to have decided upon a preferred route that they would like to take for Old Trafford. And I thought this would be a really nice starting point because I actually believe, like genuinely believe, that they've come across something that's genius and correct and probably the right way to do things. So we know that Old Trafford can't expand really any further than it is due to the fact that we cleverly built it next to a railway line and just assumed that we could move that railway if we wanted to get bigger. But we did a clever thing of purchasing land around us. And obviously with a 70,000-seater stadium that has been somewhat neglected, Ineos have come in with the bright idea, well, why don't we just build ourselves another stadium? So at the moment, the preferred option is a £2 billion, 100,000-seater stadium just behind the Stretford end. And then what they're thinking of doing, a bit like I used to do when I went into the barbers, short back and sides, just trim off the top, get around the edge, beautiful, into a nice 30,000-seater stadium, which maintains all of the memorials, all of the statues, all of the history because the turf is still there, the original tunnel, all of those sorts of things staying in position, letting the academy use it. And what could be more historical and brilliant than using the place where so many young people have come through? Very good, Connor. So many people have come through as youngsters and performed on that very pitch. It would be, I think, quite a good thing. Also, including the fact that the lady ballers would also play on that pitch. So, Matt, we'll come to you first on this one. This news coming out, how did you react to it? What do you think? Is that the preferred option, or do you think we're going to end up going down the 1 billion route of having to try to redevelop Old Trafford as it is?
No, I think this one that's come out today, I think probably does make the most sense. I think obviously you've got to look at the cost of it all as well. But like I say, I said a few weeks ago, I think when we discussed it, I think I'm not totally against the idea of a brand new stadium. I think it is a good idea, and I think it is the best idea moving forward. I think the main issue with a lot of fans was the worry about losing the history within Old Trafford itself. But I suppose if they are planning on keeping the ground there and just reducing the capacity, and keeping a lot of the historical parts of the ground in place, then I don't see how anyone can really have any complaints about it. And again, it's a good thing for the academy and the women's team as well, because women are upgrading, not having to play obviously at Lee anymore. Obviously, once that happens, and you can play at a much bigger capacity and play in front of 30,000 people rather than say 4,000 or 5,000, 6,000 people at Lee, for example. So it will benefit the club long term, women's team, academies especially. But like I say, I think moving down the route of a brand new stadium for me makes perfect sense. But the fact they're keeping that Old Trafford, the core of the ground there, and just making it small, I think it's absolutely genius.
I think genius is the right word. Absolutely. And if you're new here, please do subscribe. If you're not new here, why haven't you clicked like already? You know how this goes. Click the button for us, please. That would be grand. But Daz, I mean, I'm with Matt. I think it's a no-brainer for me that actually it maintains. It's almost like the grown up in the room, because it maintains both sides of it. The ones that want a super duper stadium that's next generation, out of this world, got a Starbucks on every corner, or a Costa, or some other place that pays their taxes, something like that within it. Job opportunities, all of these things can still happen around there, but the soul of the club and the history that's within it stays. It is the perfect answer, isn't it? That's for you, Daz.
Yeah, I think, for me, I think it was the obvious choice. I think, when you sit down as a committee and they say to each other, what do we need to do, in terms of refurbishing Old Trafford or rebuilding, they've also got to look at the problems of refurbing Old Trafford. So you mentioned the railway. Also, we're probably the only big stadium in the Premier League in terms of a Big Six club without a big screen in the stadium. So let's get this up to 100,000 capacity, or between 90 to 100, because we know Manchester United can facilitate that. Let's have the screen. How do you do that? You can't do that with the existing Old Trafford. It's just impossible. So then the question then lies, how do we leave Old Trafford whilst keeping everybody happy? So I think that this is absolutely the perfect idea, because we've got the best academy in world football, and if it's not the best, it's one of the best. But we play in a sports centre in Lees Park that's not even in Manchester, when our rivals have got their own facilities for their youth team. And the same for the women. I think if you look at where our women are within the Women's League, considering we're still quite a new football team, we're up there with all of them. We're not quite there yet, but in terms of the age of that team, it's more than overachieving. But again, they're playing in Lees Park. You know what I mean? So it was obvious to bring the club together at Old Trafford. Let's get that 100,000 capacity stadium. Let them put as many mud cones in there as they want. Double it up as a basketball court, NFL pitch, whatever. If it makes more money for the club, I think as fans, we've got to accept that is going to be a direction of that new stadium. It has got to double up as something else, because they're going to want to earn extra money from it. But also maintaining Old Trafford, because, when I go to Old Trafford, I love the fact that when you do a stadium tour, that shows you the old ramp that the likes of George Best used to run up, obviously, which they no longer use, the Munich Tunnel, the statues. It's all part of the heart and soul of what is the Theatre of Dreams. And for me, losing that would have been unacceptable. I think they've got an opportunity to keep the museum there, but extend it. Let's make this an amazing museum experience that actually shows our history, because moving all of the commercial suites over to the new Old Trafford, they're going to have that space for that.
No, I mean, I absolutely agree. I think there's lots of good points being made there. I'm going to come back to Matt in just a second about this. But Dan, I think the other side of this that's been mentioned as well is that part of the thing that Ineos want to do in order to generate more money, and we all understand that that is something they want to do, because the more money that the club gets in, the more money we have to spend. You know, it's not a ridiculously silly idea, but they want to sell the naming rights. They want to rename the stadium because sponsoring a stadium gets you a lot of money. And I think the thing for all of us has been, well, we don't want to see Old Trafford renamed. Just this sort of put that to bed as well, because if we have an academy and women's football ground that's a 30,000 seater that's called Old Trafford, that maintains the history of Old Trafford, whilst allowing us to create a new history in the, I don't know, Weetabix National Stadium of the North. Other sponsors are available. Is that the perfect answer in that one as well?
What if it's going to be called the Weetabix Stadium? No.
Listen, why would it not be Weetabix? You know, we had your Weetabix this morning. That's the sort of thing they would want. You wouldn't want it to be bloody Prime or whatever it is that those lads
No.
and Jake Paul.
Honestly, I think they've got it spot on. I'll keep it short and sweet, to be honest. I think this is how you build a legacy. We spoke about it. I think Stu was on the show and we talked about what they could possibly do. And this is the sort of thing that everybody agreed would be the best thing to do, which was a new stadium, narrow down Old Trafford a little bit, let the women play the games there, create an atmosphere. We don't lose Old Trafford. All the history stays. And this is how you future-proof your club. So with the trajectory that the women are on, by the time they move into Old Trafford, they'll be a top team and they'll probably be selling it out every single week. So you're future-proofing the club. And this is what Ineos is different to the Glazers. They're showing that there's a future and they're planning for the future. And I think what I've seen so far, it seems like the best solution. Now you've got me worried about the naming rights, though. I just dread to think what it could be.
The Lucky Charms Stadium.
Oh, no.
Oh, dear. Matt, I just wanted to ask you just briefly on this as well, though. Mm-hmm. A lot is spoken about when the United women come and play at Old Trafford. The fact that the atmosphere isn't necessarily what it is when you're at Lee Sports Village. And I know that Daz mentions that, the fact that it's a very small amount of people you can get in that compared to an Old Trafford. You know, it's 10,000 compared to 70,000. But is Dan also correct that actually this probably isn't likely until at least 2030? So it's not like we're going, we're going to get this, it'll be done tomorrow. It's going to be 4 years at least before it probably even gets into fruition and starts being built. Do you agree with Dan, therefore, this is actually the right thing to do, because we've got the chance to sell out Lee Sports Village, potentially use Old Trafford for some of the bigger clashes, then move into Old Trafford, 30,000 seater, all is well there, and you've got the ability then to start building up that legacy for the ladies as well, knowing full well that technically, if you really needed to, you could probably increase the capacity again of Old Trafford if you really needed to.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best route, like I say, especially more so for the women's team, probably more than the academy. Obviously, I can't imagine. I don't want to sound bad on they're probably not going to get up to like 30,000. I wouldn't imagine going to watch them. But at the end of the day, it's opportunity for the younger players to play in front of an increased capacity, which is only going to benefit them when they come to move into the first team and obviously play in front of more fans to be able to handle the pressure. But more so in terms of the women's team, like Daz and Dan touched on, where the women's team are going, I think that's the route they need to go down now. I think playing at Leeds one thing, but playing in front of 30,000 for the women will make a massive difference, not just to the team as a whole, but just the general performance and development of the team. So yeah, I think it is the perfect idea. But I have been saying all along that I think if you look at Arsenal's women's team, for example, or even Aston Villa, I think this season, I think they're playing all their home games at Villa Park. I think that's the route that United need to go down even now, if possible, or at least be playing more games at Old Trafford. Just to try and increase the appeal of getting more fans to Old Trafford to watch the women's team. To everyone's associates them with playing at Lee. But I do notice sometimes when they do play Old Trafford, though, you do see a lot of like Lioness fans. that are not necessarily there for the United. They're sort of there for like Mary Earps or Toon or just the English players, which again, you're going to get that at any game of football. But I think the way for him to move forward, atmosphere-wise, I think, is to try and encourage more fans to attend Old Trafford for the women's team, rather than just having the odd game there, here and there. But yeah, I think they just need to play at Old Trafford a lot more than what they are, to be quite honest.
I think I agree massively. I mean, listen, if Arsenal can fill out the Emirates, then there's absolutely no reason why we can't fill out Old Trafford. That would be my argument there. Connor's decided which perhaps be called the AFU Stadium. If you can get the money together for it, I'll sign it off. Absolutely. That's going to take some crowdfunding, Condog. Some crowdfunding indeed. And whilst Matt was speaking, this has sort of gone in my head a little bit. It could be potentially called the Snapdragon Old Trafford or Snapdragon at Old Trafford. And of course, that has a potential. But I feel like this could potentially go wrong. It could be Snapdragon, not Old Trafford. And when you obviously turn that into an acronym, you've got SNOT, or perhaps Snapdragon was Old Trafford, and then you've got SWAT. So I don't know. I feel like we're going to have to be very careful because people do love an acronym like the AFU Stadium. So we need to be careful with what we do there. But yeah, very good. Well, I think it's unanimous. I've not seen much opposition to that as an idea, which is great news. But we will obviously monitor that, keep our eyes on it, and chat about it should anything else come of it in the future, because getting the money, I suppose, is now going to be the hard part. £2 billion is not just rolling around Old Trafford and being allowed to be used for that sort of stuff, which kind of brings us on to the purpose of today's show. We're talking about the countdown begins. We're starting to look ahead to the game against Man City. And I suppose really the best place to start with that is to look at what we've already done, Daz. Now, I'm not going to go into how rubbish I think pre-season is, just as a general rule, because I feel like I've had that rant enough now, and I'll start to sound like Dan repeating myself day in, day out. But we've lost to Rosenborg, we beat Rangers, we then went to America where we lost to Arsenal in a proper game and then beat them in a penalty shootout. We beat Real Betis and then we lost to Liverpool. In terms of pre-season, do you feel like the 5 games that we've had and the preparation we've had, people only just turning up for pre-season training now, do you feel like this has been a good preparation for the season ahead?
Oh. I'm split. I'm really split, because part of me says no, because I don't think, even though we are missing loads and loads of players, and I don't feel enough was shown. 100% the football looks better. For the first time in Ten Hag's reign, that team looks coached. It looks like they're trying to do something that coaches are telling them, and we've not seen that before, I don't think, not properly. And that's a really good positive. I think in terms of identifying what youth players you want to be part of that senior team over the next 12 months, 100%, I think it's been successful. But then it's asking ourselves, what was the goal of pre-season in Ten Hag's eyes? Because, you know, it is only fair to identify Luke Shaw wasn't there, Lisandro Martinez wasn't there, Diogo Dalot wasn't there. Obviously, Lenny Yoro got injured quite early on. Potentially, that new CDM, who we thought was going to be Ugarte, isn't now, but isn't there. Well, you know, we're still missing a good 10, 12 players. But they're 10, 12 players that, whether they're going to come off the bench or going to start, they're 100% important players for Manchester United. So how much preparation can you really have without them key players there? And is this coaching that we've done during pre-season going to help them players that ultimately have not been in them training sessions, you know? So I'm always sceptical with pre-season. I don't like losing, whether it's a friendly or a cup final. I don't like losing. I want to win everything. But there's been times where as a fan base, we've been so buzzing for the season because we beat Real Madrid, we beat Arsenal, we beat Liverpool, and we've had a rubbish season. So, I don't think for me, I don't think I've seen enough to think that we're going to get into that top 4. But then I've not seen them key players in that team to make a proper, rational decision on that.
To be fair, I think we're Man United fans. We're not supposed to make rational decisions, are we? That generally seems to be what I see online anyway. Dan, NT's put, I really take very little from pre-season. It's hard to gauge where we're at. And like Daz said, a lot of our first team not even there. It really could go either way for me. And that's just kind of what it is, isn't it? We're moving into this game on Sunday, just a matter of days away against Manchester City. And yes, it's the Community Shield. Nobody's looking at that and going, wow, this is brilliant. If it was a brilliant trophy to win, David Moyes would still be our manager because it was the first thing you won. So you sit there and you look at the fact that we're moving into this game on Sunday. We still don't really know what the first team is going to look like. We don't know how they're going to play together. We don't know if they're going to be able to play together. So we don't really know if it's going to be any better. What is your thoughts of pre-season been? Because we talk about Man City, we won't want to lose to Man City, but we've already lost to both Arsenal and Liverpool, both of whom are teams that we've been looking to try and claw back some positional play against. So how are we going to do that based on what we've seen so far?
Well, we'll have a team of 11 first teamers back, I'd imagine. That will narrow the gap a little bit. Obviously, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Real Madrid to an extent, Barcelona have all had the same issues. They've had half teams because of the Euros, players missing because of injury. The only positive I can take away from the pre-season is that we've seen that Harry Amas is going to be good enough to play in the season if we need him, which is a massive positive. So I don't see if there's any harm in that at all. There's serious questions now about Collier. Could he stay at Old Trafford for next season and get some games? So they're two big positives. I think Ahmad's been a big positive on the tour as well. Another player that you would expect to see a lot more from next season. So there are positives to take from the pre-season in the sense of we've seen players maybe get a run out and look decent and likely could do something for us next season. My only concern is I watched Liverpool play quite a few games in pre-season and you can see they're working towards something already. I watched Arsenal play a few games and they're sort of ticking over where they left off last season. Still yet to see any consistent football from us. We played really well in about 30-minute periods again, but not for 90-minute periods. And that really shouldn't matter whether it's your first team or second team. They all should know what they're doing. They should know their role. There should be tactics. There should be patterns of play. We're just not seeing it at the minute. So it's a bit concerning. But we've still got loads of players come back. And when we think about we're missing players like Bruno Fernandes, Dalot, Kobe Manu, do you know what I mean? There's massive players for us to come back. So I'm going to take some positives from it. I just hope we can. I'm honestly not too fussed about the Community Shield. I'd say it's a glorified friendly, pretty much. But it will give us a barometer of where we are in the season to start with. But the one thing Ten Hag needs more than anything is a quick start. Whether that's against City or in the Premier League, he needs 4 or 5 wins in the first 6 games. It can't be anything less. Otherwise, the questions are going to be coming up straight away. And that's going to cause the season to derail early.
Seems reasonable, seems fair. Jennifer mentioned the Community Shield as a trophy. The Tour does not, so the relevance is obvious. I mean, I get where you're coming from, but nobody really counts them. Unless, of course, you're looking for a number of trophies, ones put you above Liverpool, in which case we absolutely count them time and time again, sometimes double, including the ones that are shared, because they're just as important. NT saying if we're not bringing another midfielder, which I doubt we won't, to be fair, I think Collier might stay, especially if McTominay ends up at Fulham. We'll discuss incomings and outgoings shortly. But Matt, if there's one thing that pre-season is, I genuinely wish we'd get rid of it or start the season later. Like, the WSL is not starting until the beginning of September. Was there not an argument for not starting the Premier League till the beginning of September as well and sort of pushing that back a bit? because there's just so much trying to be fit into the calendar. There's no room for manoeuvres. They have to start at stupid times. The fact that we're going to be doing that meant that we brought Lenny Euro in. We thought we had a superb defender. We all raved about him. So naturally, the bloke's now injured and is sitting in a hospital bed. What is it about everything that's going on at United? Because he's injured, Højlund's injured again now, and I just feel like I've seen this film before. As if we're just going to sit here and start listing off a bit. Oh, there's another one gone. There's another one gone. And it's not going to happen again, is it? Is that what pre-season's all about now, that we can get ourselves a little bit happy and we just drop again because of the injuries?
I think the most frustrating part is that they've actually got injured in needless games where they're not really playing for anything other than fitness and obviously game time. I think if you look at it, people obviously blaming the quality of the pitches out in America, and people saying that they should stop going on these tours and it's all commercial, which I do agree with. To an extent, also the players do need some sort of game time and some sort of, whether you call it warm weather training or whatever they call it. But no, I'm hoping it's not going to be another season like last season where we're just ticking off one injury, every week. Someone else is injured, then we're playing third or fourth choice players in the position, and then the season just goes to pot again, which I'm hoping it doesn't. I still do think, because of that, I do think we are still a couple of players short signings wise. Just to strengthen the options in the squad. I think midfield, we're a little bit lacking in quality, I think, to be honest. And that was an issue last season as well, without the injuries. I think we just need a bit more quality in the midfield. And again, do we need to look to get someone else in now with Højlund being out for, is it 6 weeks or something, I think it is? Do we need to look at another option? Also, we've got Xerxes, but it's one of them, we can't afford him playing every single minute of every game, because then you start running the risk of him becoming injured. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I just hope it's not going to be a reoccurring theme. I just hope it is going to be put down to the poor quality of pitches are played on out in America. But we'll see. I just hope we can have a good start to the season, like you say, because they really do need it, and really it should start on Saturday against City and at least put a good performance in, if nothing else.
Absolutely. I mean, NT, this is the thing. Højlund was looking good in the game before he got injured. If we start with Sancho up front, I'm not going to be too optimistic. I mean, I do feel we've got to give him a clean slate. And we might ask that question in just a second. I'll write that down about Sancho. But can anybody guess? It's quiz time. Question for you all. So I know somebody on Twitter who lives in America. And bless him, his granddaughter got the opportunity to go off and be coached by the Man United coaches. She met Dennis Irwin, which I'm very jealous about. Had a great time doing all of that. And then the family went to go and watch Manchester United. Can you guess how much the ticket was? How much do you reckon, Dan?
I'm assuming this would be in dollars.
You can put it in dollars or pounds, because like the good little boy that I am, I've converted it. So
I'm going to say $17.
$17. Okay. Daz?
It's America, so honestly, I think the price would probably be really inflated, probably closer to $100, to be fair.
You've got $100. Lovely. Matt Morgan?
Yeah, I'm probably thinking about the same. It is America. I'm thinking probably $200-300. I'd say, for something like that.
Matt Morgan's the winner. $300. Now,
For a child's ticket.
For a ticket, for any ticket, just $300 for his ticket. I mean, to be fair, he's a pensioner. And that's absolutely unreal. That's £236.43. Now, I will preface that by saying it was bought through an external ticket company, i.e. Ticketmaster, but $300. That's just like, it just goes to show again, it's no different really to what happens here in the UK. But this is why football is going down the pan, because people are pricing out, and it's all just about the money all the time.
We need a German business model. We need the German business model of football. You can literally get flights and go and watch Dortmund for the price of that ticket.
100%. And I mean, I like, listen, I love the way that 51% is owned by the fans, but can never be taken over. And I would 100%. That's what needs to come into English football if we are ever going to get the game back from the business barons that have it currently. But it's not where we are, so we just have to swallow it for now. But we are going to move on to this subject. And Jennifer says, why are we talking about Sancho? Does he have relevance at United? Well, NT bats it back like Andy Murray before he retired. He's still here and has been playing in the pre-season. Doesn't look like anyone can afford him. So you could well be seeing him a lot this season. Daz, it's well known that you're meant to be the controversial one amongst us, so we might as well start with you so we can get this out of the way and come off air if we need to. Jadon Sancho. I didn't like the way he left. I wasn't happy with him. I thought he was doing too much crying, really, and not enough work. He went off to Dortmund, stuck a couple of fingers up at United by making it to the Champions League final. But it seems as though all has been ironed over. From what we hear, Erik ten Hag's happy with how Sancho's come back. We're not hearing anything from Sancho about not being pleased to be back and not willing to take part. He has got involved in some of the pre-season friendlies, and so therefore he very well could be a part of our team going forward. Would you welcome that? Do you think that a Jadon Sancho firing on all cylinders will benefit Manchester United like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer initially thought, or is this a bad decision? Are we just going down like Anthony Martial route 2?
I think it's a bad decision, even if we was to start the Premier League season with the Jadon Sancho that we saw at Dortmund, who was considered one of the best young footballers in the world, and ultimately what got him to Manchester United at the fee that he came in. This is Paul Pogba all again. I don't care how good you are as a footballer, if you don't fit in terms of your attitude, the way that you are, then 100% now. I mean, you look at reports for Jadon Sancho, even going back to Man City, he didn't like turning up to training on time. Now, Jadon Sancho would be considered a senior footballer, even though he's still, considered quite young. Given that how long he's been around, he'd be considered a senior footballer. What message does that show to Kobe Mainoo if he's turning up to training 20 minutes late every week and not getting penalised for it? You know what I mean? It's showing and so for me, I don't want him back. I'm not one of these football fans that are going to boo him. End of the day, if he's got a shirt on opening day, then I'm going to get behind him because I want what's best for the team. I want him to get assists. I want him to get goals because it benefits the club. But if I had the choice now, I genuinely think that he is going to be moved on. I think Erik ten Hag and Jadon Sancho have sort of put this behind each other because Sancho couldn't get his move to Dortmund, and I ultimately think that was a bit between Man United pricing him out and Jadon Sancho pricing himself out in terms of wages. I don't think anyone was willing to give on that, to the point where at that point no one else was looking at him, and it left everybody at Man United with no choice but to let's just kiss and make up because there's a chance that we could line up against Man City in a couple of weeks with you as a squad player, and ultimately you've got to play. I think if a good offer came in for him, I think he'll be gone, and I think Erik ten Hag would allow him to go, and I think Amad Diallo has made that decision for him over pre-season. I think he knows that he can rely on Diallo, because the thing is, you've got to remember, you've got not very well, but you've got Rashford, you've got Garnacho that can play over there. We have still got Anthony, and I think Erik ten Hag would still prefer Anthony on that right over Jadon Sancho, especially given what's happened. Then you've got Amad Diallo, that seems to be the only player that wants that position, the only player that seems to. Can Xerxes play on the right? We're not quite sure. So I can see Jadon Sancho not playing a great deal, and he's getting paid a lot. So I want him gone, and I think the management and the coaching wants him gone. But this is just saving face, just in case we can't get rid of him. But Paul Pogba comes to mind for me. Great footballer, on his day would get into any team in the world, but just got a really poor attitude and has a negative influence on the team.
It was on his day, but his day was only 5 days in a calendar year. Yes, one of those. Absolutely. Matt, for you, would you go along with that? Do you feel that Jadon Sancho would be more of a disruptive influence? Do you think that the ploy was to bring him back, big him up so that we could sell him and move on? Or do you think that Ten Hag really does see and want to give him that opportunity? Because let's be honest, Rome wasn't built in a day, and Man United isn't going to be either. We're not going to be straight up there fighting for the title this season. It's going to take time. Has he just seen Sancho maybe as the best of a bad bunch in terms of people that he wants to get rid of, and so he's therefore willing to tolerate, I suppose is the right word for the season? What do you reckon, man?
It's a tricky one. I think with Sancho coming back, I think there was always going to be some sort of way of it being, whether you call it amicable, between Ten Hag and Sancho. Whether that's just for the course of pre-season, or that remains to be seen. It's a tricky one because this is not the first time we've been in this situation. As United fans, like I say, Pogba's a prime example. Had other players in the past where you sort of question the attitude. There's no doubt in the quality of Sancho on his day when he's at it. His qualities, he's one of them. He went to Dortmund and he's probably one of their best performers when he went there last season. Obviously, got to the Champions League final with them, so he can do it on a bigger level. Whether that'll be United, I'm not so sure. I do kind of drift down the route, like Dad said. Are they doing it to try and ease him out, possibly, just to try and get something for him? Obviously, if there's sort of tension between him and the manager, and other clubs look at that, it is a bit of a red flag to other clubs that are looking to try and sign Sancho, possibly. Do I want to be United? Yes, as a player in terms of his quality, if he can turn up every week and perform like he can. Do I see him staying? I wouldn't be shocked if he goes. He's probably the best thing I can probably say, to be honest. But if he does stay, like I say, we've got to get behind him. If he's got the United shirt on, we've got to get behind him like we do any other player or manager, whoever that may be. So, yeah, I'm not sure if he'll stay, but if he does stay, I'm sure everyone will get behind him regardless.
Well, Dan, we know that you are like the person that goes off to a dog's home and sees the one that seems to have had the most rubbish thrown at it and had the hardest possible life. And you want to go and pick that particular puppy so it has a good life. Is Sancho one of these? Is he like a Harry Maguire? Is he receiving a lot of unnecessary stick for you? Or do you kind of agree that actually Sancho is probably one we should be looking to move on, not keep?
I remember when it all happened and me and Stu was on a show together and we said that Ten Hag should have picked him the next game and said, go and perform, then go and prove me wrong. And it obviously all kicked off afterwards and then he ended up leaving the club. And he's in what would be past his last chance saloon, to be honest. I'd imagine he's been told when he's returned to the club that he's not going to play. He's not a starter. And if he wants to play, he'll earn his way back up. And if he doesn't earn his way back up, I was as well, then he's going to leave. The frustrating thing for me is this is probably more controversial than Daz, to be honest. In terms of a forward player, as a raw talent, he's the best one. He just doesn't know how to turn that into on-the-pitch performances. Like Garnacho's effort is 200 times what we see from Sancho. That's why he's a better player. If Sancho could nail down his training and actually take his career seriously in terms of turning up for training on time, like Daz says, eating right, putting that extra yards in, then we'd see an absolutely phenomenal player. I said last season, and I'm going to try and find this because I definitely said it, if we got to the Champions League final with Dortmund, that he could end up somewhere like PSG because he was losing Mbappe, and he does a little step over and he'll get the crowd on the feet and we might be able to get £45 million out of him for him. Still think that's probably the best case scenario for us. If we could get PSG to bid 40, 45 for him and he parts ways, so be it. Will I give him a chance next season? If we've played 6 games and he scored 4 goals, you're damn sure I'll back him. Whether he's capable of doing that is entirely up to him. I've yet to see it from him in a United shirt. And it's not, we've all seen his ability. We just haven't seen the desire that we'd want to see in a United shirt. Imagine if he had Bruno Fernandes's desire, what kind of player he would be. He's one of them players that you wish you could just round back at Ed and show him Roy Keane or something. Do you know what I mean? Just get a bit of desire going in you, and he's got a promising future if he wants it.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because you talk about desire, and as I say, he mentions desire there. But at the moment, there's a lot of talk, certainly online, around the selling and buying of players. The fact that Manchester United potentially seem to have put all of their eggs in the basket, the fact that they were going to sell a lot of players this season, and therefore would have the money from that to then be able to go out and buy some other players to replace them. And the question that sort of comes off of this is, are we in a better position going into the season ahead now than we were going into the season ahead this time last year? What do you make of the whole selling and buying structure? Because there's potentially reports saying that we've agreed terms with a few players around like Branthwaite, for example, but obviously we haven't physically bought them yet because the money's not necessarily there. Were we just waiting for money to be freed up by selling a Maguire, by selling a McTominay, by selling a Sancho, but these players are just not being sold? So number one, is that part of what's happened? And number two, isn't that to be expected? You know, if you sell, then great, we've got the money. If we don't sell, we've just got to crack on with it. And actually, is this just, again, another classic example of Man United fans wanting everything now and forgetting the fact that we knew, because it's been told to us plenty of times, that this is going to be 2 or 3 years before we get a squad that looks like the squad that we're expecting and wanting, that can compete consistently?
So I think we're in a worse place than we was last year, and I think we're right to be. I think look at Manchester United. People call Manchester United, we need open heart surgery. That was the most famous term. So when a person has open heart surgery, for a few weeks after that surgery, they're probably at their weakest. And then they build that strength back up, but they're better because of it, because they've got, they've fixed the core problem. I think we're in that. I think if you look at all of the players we brought in, along with the players that we're linked to, they're all relatively young, inexperienced, and they've got no Premier League experience in general. So they're all going to need time to gel, get a little bit of experience, get used to the Premier League, because it's a completely different ball game to what a lot of these have come from. I mean, only a few have come and hit the background running. So I think it's time. I think Manchester United fans have also got to remember that this new structure has pretty much only been in place for 8 weeks. Barada and Ashworth only really been in, and Wilcox probably only been in a job 8 weeks. Right now, they've made decisions based on maybe a couple of months, knowing that they've got that job. But what they've focused on is getting rid of that cancer within Manchester United. And I do think that we will go into the season worse off. I mean, you've got to remember, you've got Man City. Man City are going to be in the top two. They're going to be in the title race, and 100% they're going to be favourites to win it again. You're then looking at Arsenal. Arsenal's team are now 5 years into their project. If they bring in a centre forward, I argue they could probably pick Man City for the title. You then look at Liverpool. Liverpool might have a new manager, but that team is still relatively 6-7 years old, minus a few. You then look at Chelsea, they've got about 10 players in every position, so they're not going to have an injury crisis. You then look at Spurs, that seem to have, when Ange came in, he didn't have to cure any problems with that club. He just needed to get the team playing. So they potentially ahead of us. That puts us in 6th position potentially. So that's almost where we finished last year. So we could be a better team and still finish 6th or 7th, just because we're still behind these teams. And I think that's sort of the position we need to be in, because so long as we fix that cancer, I'm happy. And that was the structure, the stadium, everything that we've spoke about over the past 18 years. We're fixing that now. And let's finally start a 3-year plan without that cancer.
I think that's a reasonable point. Matt, we're going to come to you and ask you that same question, but I just want to, people seem to love an analogy, so I just want to throw this one in there, because on here, Jennifer's mentioned we had Pogba, Ibrahimovic, Cavani, Di Maria, and our own Ronaldo, Scholes, and Beckham. We are or should be supreme. Now, a few years ago, my niece turned 21, and I was dog sitting for my sister, and they'd been on holiday. They were coming back that night. So, being the good uncle that I am, I went off to a local card selling shop and filled up what felt like 500 balloons. It wasn't, it was probably more like 25, but still, got them all filled up with helium, whacked them in the car. That was a job. If you've never tried doing anything till you tried putting 25 balloons into the back of a car. And I managed it, no problems whatsoever. And we put them all up, tied up the little bits to it, had them all tied, looked beautiful. Really did. Took a photo of it, sent it to my sister, said, have a lovely flight home. Hope this is all beautiful for her when she turns up. Now, when my niece walked in through that door, every single one of the balloons had lost its helium and was now either on the floor or was just sagging. I bring up this analogy because that's probably less of a letdown than Pogba and Di Maria were for me. They were like, I might as well have just popped the bloody things. They were an absolute waste of time. Ibrahimovic and Cavani were too old to really have the impacts they could have had. We didn't have them in their prime. But Ronaldo, Scholes, and Beckham, I 100% agree with. Matt, for you, this selling and buying situation, are we all just getting a little bit too impatient here? Or do we really desperately need to get some out of the club so that we can get a few more in before we start? Are we better now than we were this time last year?
Yes and no. I think if you look at the early signs, obviously since Ineos have been in terms of more so in fairness, there has been a few players that have gone, albeit obviously Varane and Martial went on freeze, which I think that was inevitable anyway. They have got a few players out of the club. Obviously, the incomings came in quite swiftly and sort of quite a lot quicker than what they normally would do under the previous structure, which was encouraging. I think more so now that it's died down a little bit since, I think it was Euro was the most recent one out of them. I think because it's died down a little bit, we've not had any more Fabrizio tweets that everyone gets excited about every time a deal's been done. I think everyone's getting a bit panicked, a bit stressed because the season's literally, what is it, like 9 days or so now until the first league game. Like I said earlier on, I do still feel we are at least a couple short in terms of incomings. But from the sounds from what the club are saying, they do need to get offload some players before anyone else can come in. So obviously time is of the essence. Obviously the window doesn't shut till, is it the end of, I can't remember, is it the end of this month or beginning of September? I can't remember when it closes now, but you've got to imagine really they need to try and get the business done, or the majority of it, before the season starts. It's a tricky one. I won't say we're in a better position because obviously we are still short and we do need to get rid of certain players. But I do think if we can bring the right players in between now and whether it's the season starting or the end of the window, I think we will improve on last season. But again, I think a lot of it's going to come down to the injury records, to be quite honest. It's all right bringing these players in, but look at Euro. Plays one game, second game he's injured. So it's all going to come down to that ultimately as well as the signings.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. It's one of those, isn't it? We could get them all in, but yeah, they've still got to get through the gauntlet is the Manchester United medical department before we actually get to see them play. Hence, I didn't take off because although I may be small, I'm about 16 stone. So we carefully measured it. If it had been 26 balloons, I'd have been like the bloking up. But thankfully, all was well. So don't worry too much about that. We seem to have an infiltrator currently. Nice to see you, sir. He's put, I never watched Man United with a UCL or EPL, which tells me that you must be under the age of 12. So good night. Up a little bit late, aren't you, sunshine? So perhaps go get yourself tucked in. But if, of course, you're an adult, perhaps get onto YouTube, type in 1999, and you'll be loving Manchester United after that, because you'll get to see us win the EPL and the FA Cup and, of course, the Champions League. So just crack yourself in on that one, sunshine, and that will sort you right out. Dan, for you, better off now than we were 12 months ago, and who are you looking at?
It's just banging outside. I don't know what it is. No, is the short answer. It's just a difficult one, isn't it? Because the one thing that we sat here saying that we need, I know why he's gone, bless him. I realise what I've just said. Fantastic. What I meant is they've got these little white popper things that they chuck at the floor, and it makes a bang sound. But yeah, I worded that really well.
I never said a word.
Right, composure needed. Yeah, no, we're not better off, are we? Player-wise, I don't think we're better off. But we all said at this, 3 months ago, that we need to show clubs that we're serious in the transfer market. I saw someone the other day say, "Oh, we need to be accepting 20 million for Scott McTominay," but then Chelsea are just selling Conor Gallagher, who McTominay's had 5 seasons better than, for double the price. So why do we need to accept 20 million for McTominay? He's good enough that we should be able to get 25, 30 million for him. The same with Maguire, we should be able to get 25, 30 million. If we're going to continue to get bullied in the transfer market, I'd rather see these players stay and we have an uncomfortable year, but then we're taken seriously next summer because we've walked away from these players like Ugarte or Braithwaite or whoever, because it's just a sign to other clubs that actually they're serious. They're only going to pay that, and if we don't accept that, we will get a higher bid eventually.
I think that's why I said we're okay to be worse off this year, because there's a lot of bad habits that we've got to change. And it's also important that the people in the chat remembers that we're a better football club than we was 12 months ago. You just got to look at the new structure to see that. The way that, the Glazers are no longer pulling football strings. Probably are still commercially, but not on the football. We are a better football club, but we're not a better football team. But there's 18 years of bad habits. How many years was Ed Woodward, playing FIFA for? And ultimately, we're the banter club in the transfer market. That player that's worth 20 million quid, 100 million pounds to you, sold, send him on the plane, and that's sort of been our philosophy, or it's been, Scott McTominay that is actually worth 35, 40 million quid. You've only got to look at his numbers to see that, and his experience, you can have him for 100 grand. That's sort of been where we've been. And to change that mentality, like Dan said, that's going to take time. We've got to walk. We might have to have a really bad window, refusing to sell players like Scott McTominay because we know he's worth that and we're not going to drop below that. And also the same with buying players. As much as we know Ugarte would improve Manchester United, we've got to see a value on that and agree not to go over that valuation for him.
Well, it's just happened with Maserati, the right back. He's going to West Ham for 50 million euros. Now Man United are linked with him. It's 25 million euros. And this is the same reliable journalist that's reporting that it was 15 before and now it's 25 now. Why the sudden 10 million increase when it was West Ham buying him at 15? Now it's Man United, we want 25. And this is where Man United need to go. No, not interested, then we walk away. We can't be overcharged anymore because Man United, and we can't keep selling. I think the best player we've sold since Ronaldo.
I think the Neves transfer is a perfect example, isn't it? I mean, when we was looking at Neves, we was getting told £100 million for him, and instantly is it £70 million? I think it is into Paris Saint-Germain. Where's that £30 million drop gone, and why wasn't it offered to us? Because I think
that was dodgy anyway.
Given his age, I think, for £70 million, a fair price for him if we could have it as a performance-based number. But, a normal Man United would have just paid £100 million for him.
Very true indeed. Well, there we go. That's taken us through that one. And a fan, if you were enjoying yourself earlier, we're going to bring you up again because it leads nicely into my next question, which is, you talked about Sanderberg, his Man United level, not Ugarte's. Even Mendy's too good for Man United. Like I say, he's having a wild old time there, enjoying himself in the comments. So that's what we like to see. He's not being rude, and I particularly like this one here, where I think he's tried to write his own verse to "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel. Very good. So I'm liking that, just throwing in all the names, which I really enjoy. But as he's talking about those players, I'm just going to open this up to all three of you. I'm not going to go round and ask you individually. But it's if you wanted to. Are there any names that United are being linked with? Because we could do a show just literally on people that we're linked with, and that would take us about 9 million years to go through every single name. But are there any names that you feel are particularly strong, or that are also ones that you would particularly like to see coming into the club? So it's open forum. I'll give you a couple of minutes to throw that out there amongst yourselves.
I think that is it Zubamendi or whatever he's called. I think that one from Wales. He seems like quite a strong one that everyone seems to be getting behind. I know he's been linked with Liverpool. I think they're after him as well, apparently. And a lot of United fans are sort of encouraging and hoping they actually beat Liverpool to signing him. The Agate one was one that people seem to be getting behind, but that doesn't look as though it's going to happen now because they don't want to pay what PSG are asking, which is absolutely fair enough. Obviously, I think De Jong's, that's one you said there, De Jong's another one. That only cropped up today, but I don't think it's actually come from an actual reputable source as such, is what people call it. So that's just one that comes and goes every transfer window, which I don't see happening. Sanderberg's probably not really going to benefit us, I wouldn't say. I don't think he'd really improve on what we've currently got in midfield, if I'm quite honest.
Me and Matt are going to fight.
I guess Take It Dan disagrees, but yeah, like I say, I think United needs to be looking. Obviously, the thing is, though, it depends how many players are planning on bringing in for the midfield. I think if it's just Sanderberg, I don't really see the point. Obviously, you've got McTominay. Is he going to go? I think there's too many ifs and buts at the minute with United, especially around the midfield. If McTominay is going to depart, which nobody knows if that's going to happen at the moment, I think bringing Sanderberg and maybe. I think he'd be like a cheaper option to the others. Maybe that's Zubamendi, maybe bring him in as well, possibly if they can offload enough players. That'd be the ideal scenario. But this one or the other, and depending on outgoings, it just doesn't work for me. It's one of them. It puts you in a tricky situation, especially being so close to the season. You could have players that are lining up that know that they're not going to be at the club in a couple of weeks' time, which is, again, it's just not ideal, is it?
There's one player I would like Man United to go for, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of unpopular people in here. And I'll give you my reason first. You look at Real Madrid, you look at Man City, you look at Arsenal, who potentially are the best three teams in the world at the minute in terms of the football they play. What have they all got in common? That is a world-class CDM. Without a shadow of a doubt, you look at that player and you can give a shout for being the best player in that position. I would like to go for Kante on loan. Can we? Because looking at him in the World Cup, he's still got that quality about him. He's got an amazing attitude. This Kante could buy us 18 months. I always said that about Casemiro. Casemiro bought us 18 months to, identify who that long-term CDM was going to be. As of right now, there isn't a world-class one. What we could do is bring in a very competent, very good one. And I think Kante could sit and do that job that buys Man United 12, 18 months to then say, who is going to be this person that's going to come in and be that world-class CDM? Because I don't see a single name that's been mentioned other than someone like him or someone that's proven that's going to come in and do a job. And that's just, look at everyone that we've had since Roy Keane. It's an impossible position to fill. And I think Kante is very gettable, especially if we send Casemiro the other way.
The logic is flawless. I wouldn't disagree with the logic in what you're saying at all, because makes sense. My issue is solely, we've been doing that for too long. We've been kicking the can down the road for 12, 16, 18 months with signing Cavani, Zlatan, Casemiro. We seem to always go for players that are of age or just past the peak on the way down, and they don't come and do the business that we need. I would much prefer Collier to be given a chance if we can't get anybody than bringing in somebody for the sake of bringing them, kicking the can down the road 8 months. But then it's the fans accepting that next season is going to be tough. It's going to be another 5th or 6th place finish with maybe a cup run, and that's where we're at.
I think looking at the Kobe Mainu situation, I love the idea of giving young players a shot. But I think if you look at that, potentially our centre-back partnership fully fit next year is going to be Lisandro Martinez, who actually I think got that much football at United under his belt, believe it or not. You've then got Lenny Euro, again, no experience in the Premier League, still very, very young. You've got Kobe Mainoo, been absolutely our best player, I think, for the last 12 months, but still very inexperienced. Can we afford to put another inexperienced player in that position? You know, I think someone like a Kante, the others would just feed off. And I think I get what you're saying in terms of breaking that chains of bringing in your Cavani's, your Ibrahimoviches, but I think you could also say that they did serve a purpose at the time when we brought them in. I don't think there's been any old player that had been world class in his career and were brought in that's had a negative impact on this team. Even Casemiro, I mean, was great in his first year at Man United.
But we should have walked away from those deals, is what I'm saying. So the lesson should have been we shouldn't have paid that much money for Casemiro at that age on that wage. We should have gone for somebody younger. And this is what I was talking about earlier backstage with the Sander Berg transfer. I find it absolutely baffling that people are saying, well, he's been relegated before. Well, he's this, well, he's that, well, he's the other. Because if you take not even a deep dive, just a slight dive into his stats, he's better than pretty much every midfielder in the league for terms of long ball, short passing, pass percentage, tackles than Rodri. There's only Rodri that's better than him at most of them. He gave 20, I think it's 29 long passes away last season. He hit 125 of 146, 156. So, and this, I was talking to Beanie about it earlier. This is where United fans sort of need to step down a little bit in the sense of what we're expecting. Like, we are Manchester United, but we're not the same Manchester United anymore. We need to stop going, Ugarte's world class. He played for PSG. He's going to cost us 60 million. Actually, Sander Berg's probably going to cost us half, if not a third of that price. And he's probably going to do a better job because we don't need a world-class player anymore. We need some players that are going to link those world-class players together. Like, to be honest, like a Kante would be a perfect example if only he was 27 instead of 32. Yeah. So we just
what
need...
What's your thoughts on, let's assume that we bring in somebody like Matthias de Ligt, who you could argue is still good enough to be a starter at Man United. Let's just say he did come in. We kept Lindelof and Harry Maguire and then looked at putting Lisandro Martinez as a CDM. Because I think, you look at every attribute he's got, there is no reason why he couldn't be a CDM.
Well, he tried it at Ajax, didn't he? And it didn't work out. Ten Hag actually tried him at CDM and it didn't work. I wouldn't sign de Ligt, just personally. He missed 20 games for injury last season. The last thing we need is another injury-prone defender. We've got too many of those. So, yeah, for me, I just think we need to take a step back. I can remember when Liverpool signed Robertson from Hull City when they got relegated. He then went on to be one of the best left-backs in the Premier League for 4 or 5, 6, 7 years, winning the Champions League, the Premier League. It doesn't matter. And I think this is where you see Ineos's brand and how they're going to work. If a player is measuring in the right stats, they'll be part of the conversation because that's what they think the squad needs. So this is why we've got a list of 4 or 5 midfielders. And Ugarte may be the FIFA signing, but Berg would be just as good for the squad in terms of he'll get us ticking. We need to play football. And I would much prefer, what is he, 26? He's not over the hill. He's got Premier League experience. It's probably only going to cost us 20 million. I would definitely take him as a signing over. Oh, they want 86 million for Ugarte now, and he's on 350 grand a week. I'm fed up with that. I've had too many Lukaku's and Pogba's and Sancho's and everybody else to want to see that again. But I do like the Kante shout. I really do. I'd be tempted.
I don't know. I just think that the experience he would bring in. You know what? I understand what everybody says about all of these old players coming into United, but the attitude that Kante's got even now, you know what I mean? I think you could never knock that. He's got that perfect attitude. I think the Man United Foundation would love him. I think the fan base would love him. And I genuinely believe he could do a really good job. And as good as he's been in his career, I could never say he's ever had an ego. And I think we could do with someone like that.
Well, I think that was a very entertaining conversation. Well done, you three, for carrying that along by yourselves there. For anyone wondering why I haven't said anything, I hate pre-season. I hate it. It's like, it's almost as bad as the Fantasy Premier League. Dan, why don't you tell everyone all about the Fantasy Premier League whilst you're here and you care about it?
It's set up. It's all ready to go. The link is on Twitter, I believe. And I was trying to get Barry interested, or shoehorn Barry into being interested by saying that we're going to do a live forfeit for whoever loses. So I thought Barry was like, "Yeah, I'm on it," and he just went, "Yeah, well, I've lost then." So just pick what you want Barry to do by the end of the season, really.
Absolutely. You lot choose a forfeit, and I'll probably end up doing it because I sincerely doubt. I'll do the first couple of weeks, and then after that, that'll be game over. But better things to do in my life. But there we go. So that's that. I have another question for you. I've got two remaining questions. The last one is a little entertaining one for you. But this one came off of a press release that came through Andre Onana. Now, Onana, God bless him, has come out in an interview and basically told us all to effectively hang on to our hats because there's going to be some risks taken this season. Now it's coming. Now, I didn't quite know what to make of this as a statement. What does he mean by that? Does he mean he's actually going to venture off of his line this season rather than trying to stay a la David De Gea? Does he mean by taking a risk that we might see Bayindir given a chance in goal rather than just sticking one person in there? What could it possibly mean? Matt, what do you reckon? What is Andre Onana trying to say? And have you gone through a little bit of squeaky bum time ever since you heard it?
Truthfully, a few days on, I've still absolutely no clue what he's on about, if I'm quite honest with you. I don't think anyone really knows. The problem is, though, he's that sort of goalkeeper anyway. So anything that he does that's risky just wouldn't come as any sort of surprise to anyone. Whether he's just going to stand off his line for 90 minutes of a game and just run back on his line when someone's on the attack, or who actually knows, to be quite honest. With Onana, he's one of them. Has it been misinterpreted what he's been trying to say? Is it a language thing? I honestly have no idea. It did worry me when I read it. I'm sat there thinking, God help us all. God help us all. What's going to happen? But yeah, no, honestly, I don't know how to interpret it. I just hope it's not what people think it's going to be. And hopefully it just doesn't end up costing us come the start of the season, whatever it's going to be that he's planning on doing. But yeah, honestly, I have no clue what he's on about, to be quite honest, is my answer.
Fair play, Jonathan. That was probably comment of the day so far, but very good. Daz, for you, does it worry you slightly? We all know that Onana, when he was brought in, was somebody we expected to come out off of his line a bit more and to give a bit more distribution. Do you think it maybe means a little bit more like that he is going to be a bit more adventurous?
Yeah, I think his comments really excite me. I think they really, really excite me. And the reason why they excite me is because last year, I think he did an all right job. You mean you remove the performances that you saw in the Champions League? He actually had a really good Premier League campaign, I think, even though we did concede loads. But it's always key to remember that he was probably one of the only goalkeepers that never had a stable back four in front of him, ever. I think he had more centre-back partnerships than the whole of the Premier League combined, and he was brought in not to be a David De Gea, not to stay on his line. I think he was brought in to be the Alisson-type goalkeeper, get him out the 18-yard box, let him take defenders on, and let's play the ball out. Unfortunately, because of the injury crisis that we had, we ended up with likes of Lindelof, Maguire, Johnny Evans playing at the back for us. Because they're slow, because they're not ball-playing defenders, they had to play a lot deeper, which meant that Onana couldn't come out. Onana's comments for me tell me that team is playing a high line, which means he can now play that role that we wanted him to come in and play. And for me, that really excites me because that means that we have evolved as a football team. Although I said at the beginning earlier that I don't think we're in a better place, I think there's that small percentage, and I think I said it last time I was on podcast, that I think we're closer to the team that finished third than we are to the team that finished seventh, and an injury-free season or thereabouts would show that. And I think if we can play a high line with the likes of Onana playing the ball out, I think we'll have a great season.
I think possibly so. I mean, let's be honest, it's just all about where the defenders choose to stand. They've just got to do that correctly and then make sure the midfielder are in the right spot. You know, if they're set out correctly from a goal kick and from the goalkeeper having the ball and they split correctly, it shouldn't be a problem.
Can I just
But
say really quickly as well, I don't actually think, obviously, if you plan on taking risks, whether that means obviously playing the high line like Daz is saying, for me, the thing that worries me, I feel like his distribution isn't any better than De Gea's. Some may disagree, but I've seen him kick the ball out quite a few times, and a lot of the time it does go out of play. You get the odd one where he does pull off a long pass, he does reach one of our players. I've just not seen anything that's sort of gone, wow, that. I've not seen a massive improvement in terms of that anyway. But that's just me. Whether that's just a first season thing and an adaptation thing, I don't know. I hope he actually does come good and obviously does start showing the qualities he did show. Because Inter Milan, he was actually showing it. So, like I say, whether it is an adaptation thing, maybe, but that's just how I interpreted it last season. But remains to be seen if he shows this season what he's really capable of. But yeah,
fair play. Dan, what does it mean for you? I've got to be honest, I was a little bit nervous when I heard it. But do you think that actually it could be quite good? Do you think he's going to go a bit more Barthez or a bit more Van der Sar? Where's he going to go with this?
Still getting my head around the high line, low line stuff.
I'm still getting my head around the fact that he might take his shorts off before a penalty kick.
What he's saving it with, that's all. Yeah. The high line, low line thing I've heard this. It baffles me so much. So, Man United over the last 5 years, the highest line that we've played is with Maguire, Lindelof, and David De Gea in defence, and it's by a good 7 meters on any of the other teams. So, bringing in these players that are going to play this high line really confuses me because we've got players that can play a high line. We're just choosing not to play a high line. We're camping out our box for some reason. The Onana thing, I was in panic mode when I read it. I'm fully expecting him to be halfway line, taking on 3 players, try to swing a ball out to the left. But I don't know. I do think did he get lobbed twice in pre-season last season? And then after that, he was really passive in his coming out. He wasn't on the ball. So I hope we do see a little bit better from him. And I agree 100% with Matt. It was something that me and Stu, again, discussed on one of the shows when we signed him. And I made the point of the reason that Inter Milan won so many balls when the balls were hit long is because their players would fight for the ball and win the second ball, which is something that we haven't been doing at Manchester United. The ball goes long. If Højlund doesn't win it, nobody else wins it. Or if Fernandes doesn't win it, nobody else wins it. So that's another reason why you don't, maybe his passing stats aren't very good from the back, to be honest. We need, like Xerxes might be good at that. I don't know. I've not seen much of him, to be honest. But we need the players to fight for the ball as well as the ball to be good, if that makes sense. It's the same with the passing from the back. You can only pass to a point, and then we sort of get stuck. So there's improvements to be made. I don't know. Yeah, they did. When I read them, I was a little bit like, what are we going to expect here?
Very, very interesting. And Jennifer just saying, basically, let's get David De Gea back. Well, there we go. Maybe not. My last question. And you know, we started this whole show with a conversation. NT's put, I think having a player to come and get the ball from midfield will help a lot with the Niners distribution. Casemiro was not on it last season. Absolutely. It's all about the midfield. You know, you can't just give the ball to your defenders and then expect them to bypass the midfield and maintain the ball. The midfield have got to be that joining part that gets the ball from the defence through to the attack or back out to the wings. You know, you've got to use them in order to do that. We started the show today talking about Old Trafford and talking about how Old Trafford could be reduced to a 30,000 capacity stadium to be used for the women's team and the academy, whilst a brand new 100,000 seater, £2 billion stadium was built. And so that led me to my final question. At the moment, as far as I'm aware, there are 6 statues at Old Trafford, one of which is actually inside Old Trafford. We, of course, have the Trinity with Lord Charlton and Best. There's one for Sir Alex Ferguson. There's one for Sir Matt Busby. Dennis Law has another one, I do believe, inside the stadium. But the question is very simple. If we were to get one last statue to put up outside Old Trafford before we got a brand new stadium, which player or manager would you want that statue to be made for? It's a great question. Whilst we're there, I just want to, while they're having a little think about it, because that's a tricky question to just drop on people, and you lot can have a little think about it in the comments as well. It just takes me back to when James Corden made the David Beckham statue. And it looked absolutely nothing like him. It was quite a moment. I very rarely see David Beckham not looking humble, but on that occasion, he was ready to throw it off the edge himself, and he's never looked so happy to see something smash on the floor in front of him. I have given you, as best as I possibly can, enough time for you to have thought this through. So, which player needs to have a statue, or manager needs to have a statue? Who's going to go first? They're struggling. To be fair, we'll go straight in with what Wayne's put on, because one of the commenters has put it out. Straight in with Ryan Giggs, most decorated player.
I'm going to say Wayne Rooney.
Well, he's gone in. Wayne Rooney, go for it.
I'm going to say Wayne Rooney, and I think his track record, what he won at the club, the goals he scored. I mean, we've seen some of the players that have been at Man United over the years. Only Wayne Rooney, for me, suppressed Bobby Charlton in the goals. The goals, I know, but we've seen, in my opinion, with Eric Cantona, etc., I think we've seen better goal scorers than Wayne Rooney. But the fact is, Wayne Rooney broke that record, I think. Yeah, for me, it's Wayne Rooney. He's got to have a statue. He's got to. I think he represents that new generation of Manchester United. You know, I know you've got the likes of George Best, Bobby Charlton, you know, all them names that you could put in the mix. But for me, Wayne Rooney represents that new breed, that new generation. And I think we do need to bring that in. I know someone mentioned Ryan Giggs, so I wouldn't be against that either. I just think with the personal issues happening with Ryan Giggs, Man United probably wouldn't touch it right now.
No, that would be very tricky indeed. We've had some very interesting shouts. NT hasn't fully understood the assignment, as he has named two players that potentially could get one who's already got one, and neither of those is one, is it, NT? So I'm going to let you narrow that down as to which one you'd like. But the fact Sir Alex has already got one means you can either have Brian Robson or Roy Keane. Clearly, Mark's having us on. He thinks David Moyes should get a statue, which we could probably make out of his charity shield. That would be good. Jennifer Jordan, no need for Nelson's column. Just relocate to a spot in the new stadium. No one has prime seat United. Oh, Jennifer, come on. Play the game. Dav has gone for the King. I presume you mean Eric Cantona and not Elvis Presley. That will be going down a Fulham route. Remember when they had Michael Jackson statue outside Fulham Stadium? Absolutely madness. Andy Bean changes his mind from Wayne Rooney to Eric Jemba. Would you have one statue or would you have two? NT wants a statue of Solskjaer or Cantona. Jennifer wants to name it as the Bobby Charlton Stadium. So,
what about a different route completely, Barry? Instead of having a statue, having a wall, whether that's the face of one of the new stadiums or even the back of the Stretford and that wall, because obviously it looks as if we are going to keep Old Trafford, and Man United coming up with a Hall of Fame where we every year induct players that have played for Manchester United, coaches, into a Hall of Fame, and on that wall there's a plaque of every single player that we induct into the Hall of Fame. Actually, let's celebrate them all.
I think it's a very good idea that you've just had, but it would really spoil my game. So for now, we're going to stick with one statue, but it's a bloody good idea. I do like it. The intruder has gone for Roy Keane before sticking in Ronaldo. Wayne saying, let's have a trinity. Let's go for Wazza, Ronaldo, and Tevez. I can't see Tevez ever having a statue at Old Trafford after the way that man left, but I do understand what you're trying to get at. And NT saying one statue is not enough for Sir Alex Ferguson. So Matt and Dan, who would you put in there if we poo-pooed the idea of the Wall of Fame, which would allow everybody in?
I'd love a statue of Ronaldo just because I used to just absolutely adore Ronaldo when he was at United. But the one I'd probably go for, which probably just hopefully more would agree with, Van Nistelrooy.
I am so disappointed in every single Manchester United fan that is currently watching this stream because you have just given Liverpool fans the absolute fireworks to take the mickey out of us. How is it not Paul Scholes?
Woo!
It's got not a single person in the comments has said Paul Scholes. It's got to be Paul Scholes. It's got to be. Never threatened to leave the club, never held the club to ransom, performed, literally carried Man United on his back, retired, came back, won a title. It's got to be Paul Scholes. It's got to be.
I think if we had a Paul Scholes one, I'd like to see it of them all. Paul Scholes, David Beckham, Nicky Butt. You know, not because Nicky Butt should have a statue, not because, you know, Phil Neville should have a statue, but what that group of players meant to us as a fan base and what it meant to the future of the academy. I think a statue should be more than just what they achieved on a pitch. It should be a bigger presence, you know, what they did for the football club and what they did for the football club, including Phil Neville, including Gary Neville, you know, as a group of players. I think they did more for the football club than maybe Eric Cantona, than maybe Paul Scott, you know. You get what I'm saying? I think they probably did more as a group than maybe some of these individual players did as talent.
Very, very interesting. Beanie saying, quite right there, I'd put money on Dan saying, but even better than that, though, Andy, I actually tried to put it in his mind at the very beginning with the whole James Corden and Beckham, but he didn't fall for it. He managed to think through it and instead went for Paul Scholes. Wayne said, I've already said it, but it does actually have to be Giggs. One club player, most decorated, 13 Premier Leagues, 2 Champions Leagues. And I think technically, if you're looking at the modern player, I think it's hard to really disagree with you. The idea you're coming up with does make a lot of sense. He is, as you say, absolutely superb. So there you go. Some very, very good ones. I've got to be honest. If it had been me, I would have said Eric Cantona. I think there has been no player that has changed the fortunes of a football club more so since the Trinity that other than him. Like, he came in after winning the title with Leeds of all people, and manages to come in and get Manchester United back to the promised land and basically started it all off. If it wasn't for the likes of Cantona, would we have had the likes of Sir Alex staying all the way through? And Mayor Monkey saying statues of the 99 team. Well, why not? It would be good. But to be fair, I really did like Daz's idea of making sort of like a wall of fame, maybe like a bunch of bricks that change each time, or even like a walk of fame.
I'd like us to be the first team to do it as well, because I think, I mean, you mentioned Paul Scott. I mean, we could sit here and for an hour and 20 minutes and all pick a name that you could have a fair shout. These players should all be in our own Hall of Fame, you know, all the way back from Duncan Edwards, all the way until, you know, some of the modern players. And I think something like that would be amazing, even if it was just the plaques on walls of maybe, you know, a brass cut out with the player, you know, what his name is and the year he got inducted, you know.
There's your museum extension that we was talking about earlier. That's your museum extension.
Should definitely send it off and put it in there. Maybe send it to Must or something like that, because that is a very good idea. And of course, if we did get a statue of Eric Cantona, there's only one pose it would be in. The iconic moment with the collar up and him just stood there like that. Just going, yeah. It's the one. That's where you would go. Listen, guys, I had an absolute ball of a time. It's been an hour and 24 minutes, which is 24 minutes really longer than I was expecting to go today. But we've not been on for a while, so we thought we'd have a slightly longer one this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure, every single one of you in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us. Daz, if people wanted to hear more of you, where could they find you?
So I'm on TikTok. That's Stay Controversial. I am moving to YouTube when the season starts, but yeah, mainly on TikTok at the minute.
Beautiful. Well, there we go. You can see him on TikTok and obviously here when we get the opportunity to bring him on. Equally, we've got Matt over there in the corner. When you're not tweeting rubbish on the All for United Twitter account, where are you usually tweeting rubbish?
Usually on my handle just below @__ Matt Morgan. But yeah, also don't forget to follow the All for United page as well, because I do probably post more on there than I do on my own at the moment. So yeah, make sure you follow All for United. I think we're on about 20 off 1.1k now.
Ooh, flying.
So
I like to
make
see
sure
on
you
the
follow.
road.
Yeah.
Beautiful. There we go. And if you haven't already, please make sure you are liking and subscribing all of the content. You can find us here on YouTube. You can find us on TikTok. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram. But there's not a huge amount to see on there. But if you want to look at some of the ancient stuff we've got on, feel free. That's also on All for United. We will catch you again. I don't know when. It could be Saturday evening just before the Community Shield. It could be Sunday evening after the Community Shield. It could be in 3 weeks' time on a Thursday. Who knows? That's why I need to get on the social medias, find out when we're going to be on. We're looking really forward to it. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a safe week. Enjoy the rest of the Olympics. Goodbye.